11. Chapter 1st, The Living World. How wonderful is the living world! The wide range of living types is amazing. The extraordinary habitats in which we find living organisms, be it cold mountains, deciduous forests, oceans, freshwater lakes, deserts, or hot springs, leave us speechless. The beauty of galloping horse, of the migrating birds, the valley of flowers, or the attacking sharks evokes Eve and the deep sense of wonder. The ecological conflict and cooperation among members of a population and among population of a community, or even the molecular traffic inside a cell, make us deeply reflect on what indeed is life. The question has two implicit question within it. The first is a technical and one and seek answer to what living is as opposed to the non-living, and the second is philosophical one and seeks answer to what the purpose of life is. As scientists, we shall not attempt answering the second question. We will try to reflect it on what is living. 1.1 What is living? When we try to define living, we conventionally look for distinctive characteristics exhibited by living organisms: growth, reproduction, ability to sense environment and mount a suitable response come to our mind immediately as unique features of living organisms. One can add a few more features like metabolism, ability to self replicate, self organize, interact, and emergence to this list. Let us try to understand each of these. All living organisms grow, increase in mass, and increase in number or in individual are twin characteristics of growth. A multicellular organism grow by cell division. In plant, the growth by cell division occur continuously throughout their lifespan. In animals, this growth is seen only up to a certain age. However, cell division occur in certain tissue to replace lost cells. Unicellular organisms grow by cell division. One can easily observe this in vitro culture by simply counting the number of cells under the microscope. The majority of higher animals and plants growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. One must remember that increase in body mass is considered as growth. Non-living objects are also grow. If we take increase in body mass as a criterion for growth, mountains, boulders, and sand mounds do grow. However, this kind of growth exhibited by non-living objects is by accumulation of material on the surface. In living organisms, growth is from inside. Growth, therefore, cannot be taken as a defining property of living organisms. Conditions under which it can be observed in all living organisms have to be explained, and then we understand that it is a characteristic of living system. A dead organism does not grow. Reproduction likewise is a characteristic of living organisms. In multicellular organisms, reproduction refers to the production of progeny, processing features more or less similar to these parents. Invariably and implicitly, we refer to sexual reproduction. Organisms reproduce by asexual means also. Fungi multiply and spread easily due to millions of asexual spores they produce. In lower organisms like yeast and hydra, we observe budding. In planaria, flatworms, we observe true regeneration. Fragmented organisms regenerate the lost part of its body and becomes a new organism. The fungi, the filamentous algae, the protonema of mosses all easily multiply by fragmentation. When it comes to unicellular organisms like bacteria, unicellular algae, or amoeba, reproduction is synonymous with growth. Increase in number of cells. We have already defined growth as equivalent to increase in cell number or mass. Hence, we notice that in single cell organism we are not very clear about the usage of these two terms, growth and reproduction. Further, there are many organisms which do not reproduce. Mules, fertile worker bees, infertile human couples, etc. Hence, reproduction cannot be an inclusive defining characteristic of living organisms. Of course, no non living object is capable of reproducing or replicating by itself. Another characteristic of life is metabolism. All living organisms are made of chemicals. These chemicals, small and big, belonging to various classes, size, functions, etc., are constantly being made of, changed into some other biomolecules. These conversions are chemical reaction or metabolic reaction. These There are thousands of metabolic reactions occur simultaneously inside all living organisms, be they unicellular or multicellular. All plants, animals, fungi, and microbes exhibit metabolism. The sum total of all the chemical reaction occurring in our body's metabolism. No non-living object exhibits metabolism. Metabolic reaction can be demonstrated outside the body in cell-free system. An isolated metabolic reaction outside the body of an organism performed in a test tube is neither living or non-living. Hence, while metabolism is a defining feature of all living organisms without exception, isolated metabolic reactions in vitro are not living things but surely living reactions. Hence, cellular organisms of the body is the defining feature of life forms. Perhaps the most obvious and technically complicated feature of all living organisms is the ability to sense their surrounding or environment and respond to these environment stimuli, which could be physical, chemical, or biological. We sense our environment through our sense organs. Plants respond to external factors like light, water, temperature, other organisms, pollutants, exam, etc. All organisms, from the prokaryotes to the most complex eukaryotes, can sense and respond to environmental cues. Photoperiod affect reproduction in seasonal breeders, both plant and animals. All organisms handle chemical entering their body. All organisms therefore are aware of their surroundings. Human being is the only organism who is aware of himself, has self-conscious. Consciousness therefore become the defining property of living organisms. When it comes to human being, it is the more difficult to define the living state. We observe patients lying in coma in hospitals, virtually supported by machines which replace heart and lungs. The patient is otherwise brain dead. The patient has no consciousness. Are we patients who never come back to normal life? Living or non-living? In higher classes you will come to know that all living phenomena are due to underlying interaction. Properties of tissues are not present in the constituent cell but arise as a result of interaction among the constituent cells. Similarly, properties of cellular organelles are not present in the molecular constituents of the organelles but arise as a result of interaction among the molecular component comprising of organelles. These interactions result in emergent property at a higher level of organization. The phenomenon is true in the hierarchy of organization complexity at all living levels. Therefore, we can say that living organisms are self-replicated, evolving and self-regulating interactive system capable of responding to external stimuli. Biology is the story of life on earth. Biology is the story of evolution of living organisms on earth. All living organisms, present, past, future, are linked to one another by the sharing of the common genetic material but to varying degree. 1.2 Diversity in the living organisms. If you look around, you will see a large variety of living organisms, be it potted plants, insects, birds, your pet, or other animals and plants. There are also several organisms that you cannot see with your naked eye, but they are all around you. If you were to increase the area that you make observations in, the range of the range and variety of organisms that you see would increase. Obviously, if you were to visit a dense forest, you will probably see a much greater number and kind of living organisms in it. Each kind of plant, animal, or organism that you see present a species. The number of species that are known and described range between 1.7 to 1.8 million. This refers to biodiversity or the number and type of organisms present on earth. We should remember here that as we explore new areas and even old ones, new organisms are continuously being identified. As stated earlier, there are millions of plants and animals in the world. We know the plant and animal in our own area by their local names. These local names would vary from place to place, even within the country. Probably you would recognize the confusion that would be created if we did not find ways and means to talk to each other to refer to organisms we are talking about. Hence, there is a need to standardize the naming of living organisms such that a particular organism is known by the same name all over the world. The process called nomenclature. Obviously, nomenclature or naming is only possible when the organism is described correctly and we know to what organism the name is attached to. This is identification. In order to facilitate the study, number of scientific has established procedures to assign a scientific name to each known organism. This is acceptable to biologists all over the world. For example, scientific names are based on agreed principles and criteria, which are provided in International Code for Botanical Nomenclature (ICBN). You may ask, how are animals named? Animal taxonomists have evolved International Code for Zoological Nomenclature (ICZN). The scientific name ensures that each organism has only one name. Description of any organism should enable the people in any part of the world to arrive the same name. They also ensure that such a name has not been used for any other known organism. Biologists follow universally accepted principle to provide scientific names to known organisms. Each name has two components, the generic name and the specific epithet. The system of providing a name with two components is called binomial nomenclature. This naming system, given by Carl Linnaeus, is being practiced by biologists all over the world. This naming system using a two-word format was found convenient. Let us take an example of mango. Understand the way of providing scientific names better. The scientific name of mango is given as Magnifera indica. Magnifera indica. Let us see how it is binomial name. In this name, Magnifera represent the genus, while indica is a particular species or a specific epithet. Other universal rules of nomenclature are as follows. First, biological names are generally in Latin and written in italics. They are Latinized or derived from Latin irrespective of their origin. The first word in biological name represents the genus, while the second word component denotes the specific epithet. Both the words in a biological name, when written, are separately underlined or printed in italics and to indicate their Latin origin. Fourth, the first word denoting the genus starts with a capital letter while the specific epithet starts with a small letter. It can be illustrated with the example of Magnifera indica. Name of the author appears after the specific epithet at the end of biological name and it's written in an abbreviated form. Example, Magnifera indica. Lin. It indicates that this species was first described by Linnaeus Since it is nearly impossible to study all the living organisms, it is necessary to devise some means to make this possible. This process is a classification. Classification is the process by which anything is grouped into convenient categories based on some easily observable character. For example, we easily recognize groups such as plants or animals or dogs, cats or insects. The moment we use any of these terms, we associate certain characters with the organisms in that group. What image do you see when you think of a dog? Obviously, each one of us will see dog and can not cats. Now, if we were to think of Alsatians, we know what we are talking about. Similarly, suppose we were to say mammals, you would of course think of animals with external ears and body hairs. Likewise, in plant, if we try to talk of wheat, the picture in each of our mind will be of wheat plant, not of rice or any other plant. Hence, all these dogs, cats, mammals, wheat, rice, plant, animals, etc. are convenient categorized we use to study organisms. The scientific term for these categories is taxa. Here you must recognize that the taxa can indicate categories at very different levels. Plants also form a taxa. Wheat is also a taxa. Similarly, animals, mammals, dogs are all taxa. But you know that a dog is mammal and mammal are animals. Therefore, animals, mammals, dog represent taxa at different levels. Hence, based on characters, all living organisms can be classified into different taxa. This process of classification is taxonomy, external and internal structure, along with the structure of cell development process and ecological information of organisms are essential and form the basis of modern taxonomic studies. Hence, characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature are the processes that are basic to taxonomy. Taxonomy is not something new. Human beings have always been interested in knowing more and more about the various kind of organisms, particularly with reference to their own use. In early days, human beings needed to find source for their basic needs of food, clothing, shelter. Hence, the earliest classification were based on the uses of various organisms. Human beings were since long not only interested in knowing more about the different kinds of organisms and their diversity, but also the relationship among them. The branch of study was referred to as systematics. The word systematic is derived from Latin word systema, which means systematic arrangement of the organism. Linnaeus used Systema Nature as the title of his publication. The scope of systematics was later enlarged to include identification, nomenclature, and classification. Systematics takes into account evolutionary relationship between organisms. 1.3 Taxonomic categories. Classification is not a single step process but involves hierarchy of steps in which each step represents a rank or category. Since the category is a part of overall taxonomic arrangement, it is called taxonomic category, and all categories together constitute the taxonomic hierarchy. Each category referred to as a unit of classification, in fact represent a rank, is commonly termed as taxon. Taxonomic categories and hierarchy can be illustrated by an example. Insects represent a group of organisms sharing common features like three pairs of jointed legs. It means insects are incognizable, concrete objects which can be classified and thus were given a rank or category. Can you name other such group or organisms? Remember, group represent category. Category further denotes rank. Each rank or taxon in fact represent a unit of classification. These taxonomic group category are distinct biological entities, not merely morphologically aggregates. Taxonomical studies of all known organisms have led to the development of common categories such as kingdom, phylum, or division, class, order, family, genus, and species. All organisms, including those in the plant and animal kingdom, have species as the lowest category. Now, the question you may ask is how to place an organism in various categories. The basic requirement is the knowledge of characteristic of an individual or group of organisms. This helps in identify similarities, dissimilarities among the individual of same kind of organisms as well as of other kind of organisms. 1.3.1 Species. Taxonomic studies considered a group of individual organisms with fundamental similarities as a species. One should be able to distinguish one species from the other closely related species based on the distinct morphological difference. Let us consider Magnifera indica, Sulam, Tubersonum, potato, and Panthera leo lion. All the three names indica, tubersum, and leo represent the specific epithet, while the first word Magnifera, Solanum, and Panthera are genera and represent another higher level of taxon and category. Each genus may have one or more than one specific epithet representing different organisms but having morphological similarity. For example, Panthera has another specific epithet called tigris, and Sulam includes species like Nigrum and Melangana. Human beings belong to the species Sapiens, which is grouped in the genus Homo. The scientific name thus for human being is written as Homo sapiens. 1.3.2 Genus. Genus comprise a group of related species which has more characteristics in common in comparison to species of other genera. We can say that genera are aggregates of closely related species. For example, potato and brinjal are two different species but both belong to the genus Solomon. Panthera leo, leopard P. paradis, and tiger P. tigris, with several common features, are all species of the genus Panthera. This genus differs from another genus Felis, which include cat. 1.3.3 Family. The next category, family, has a group of related genera with still less number of similarities as compared to genus and species. Families are characterized on the basis of both vegetative and reproductive features of plant species. Among plants, for example, three different genera Solemn, Petunia, and Datura are placed in the family Solans. Among animals, for example, genus Panthera comprising lion, tiger, leopard is put along with genus Felis cats in the family Felidae. Similarly, if you observe the features of cat and a dog, you will find some similarities and some difference as well. They are separated into two different families, Felidae and Canidae respectively. 1.3.4 Order. You have seen earlier that categories like species, genus, and families are based on the number of similar characters. Generally, order and other higher taxonomic categories are identified based on the aggregates of character. Order, being a higher category, is the assemblage of families which exhibit a few similar characters. The similar characters are less in number as compared to different genera including in a family. Plant family like Convolvulaceae, Solanaceae are included in the order Polynomials, mainly based on the floral character. The animal order Carnivora include families like Felidae and Canidae. 1.3.5 Class. The category include related orders. For example, order Primata comprising monkey, gorilla, and gibbon is placed in class Mammalian, along with order Carnivora that include animal like tiger, cat, and dog. Class Mammalia has another order also. 1.3.6 Phylum. Classes comprising animals like fishing, amphibians, reptiles, birds, along with mammals constitute the next higher category called phylum. All these based on the common features like presence of notochords and dorsal hollow neural system are included in phylum Chordata. In case of plants, classes with a few similar characters are assigned to a higher category called division. 1.3.7 Kingdom. All animals belonging to various phyla are assigned to the highest category called kingdom Animalia in the classification system of animals. The kingdom Plantae, on the other hand, is distinct and comprise all living from various divisions. Henceforth, we will refer to these two groups as animals and plant kingdom. The taxonomic category from species to kingdom have been shown in ascending order. Starting with species in figure 1.1, these are broad categories. However, taxonomists have also developed sub-categories in the hierarchy to facilitate more sound and scientific placenta of various taxa. Look at the diversity in figure 1.1. Can you recall the basis of arrangement? Figure 1.1, taxonomic categories showing hierarchical arrangement in ascending order. Say for example, as we go higher from species to kingdom, the number of common characters goes on decreasing. Lower the taxa, more are the characteristics that are member with the taxon share. Higher the category, greater is the difficulty of determining the relationship of two other taxa at the same level. Hence, the problem of classification becomes more complex. Table 1.1 indicate the taxonomic categories to which some common organisms like housefly, man, mango, and wheat belongs. Table 1.1 organism with their taxonomic categories. 1.4 taxonomical age. Taxonomic studies of various species of plants, animals, and other organisms are useful in agriculture, forestry, industry, and in general in knowing our bio resources and their diversity. These studies would require correct classification and identification of organisms require intense laboratory and field studies. The collection of actual specimens of plants and animal species is essential and is the prime source of taxonomic studies. These are also fundamental to studies and essential for training in systematics. It is used for classification of an organisms, and the information gathered is also stored along with the specimen. In order, the specimen is preserved for the future. Biologists have established certain procedures and techniques to store and preserve the information as well as the specimens. Some of these are explained to help you understand the usage of these aids. 1.4.1 Herbarium. Herbarium storehouse of collected plant specimens that are derived, pressed, and preserved on sheets. Further, these sheets are arranged. Figure 1.2 Herbarium showing a stored specimen. According to a universally accepted system of classification, these specimens, along with their description on herbarium sheets, become a storehouse or repository for future use. Figure 1.2. The herbarium sheets are also carry a label providing information about date and place of collection, English, local and botanical names, family, collector's name, etc. Herbaria also serve as quick referral system in taxonomical studies. Figure 1.4.2 Botanical Gardens. These specialized gardens have collection of these living plants for reference. Plant species in these gardens are grown for identification purpose, and each plant is labeled indicating its botanical scientific name and its family. The famous botanical garden at Kew, England, Indian Botanical Garden, Hora, India, at a National Botanical Research Institute, Lucknow, India. 1.4.3 Museum. Biological museum are generally set up educational institutes such as schools and colleges. Museum has collection of preserved plants and animal specimens for study and reference. Specimens are preserved in the container on jar in preservation solution. Plant and animal specimens may also be preserved as dry specimen. Insects are preserved in insect boxes after collecting, killing, and pinning. Larger animals like birds and mammals are usually stuffed and preserved. Museums often have collection of skeletons animals too. 1.4.4 Zoological Park. These are the places where wild animals are kept in protected environment under human care and which enable us to learn about their food habits, and behavior. All animals in a zoo are provided as far as possible the conditions similar to their natural habitats. Children love visiting these parks, commonly called the zoos. Figure 1.3. Figure 1.3, picture showing animal in different zoological parks in India. Figure 1.4.5, key is another taxonomical aid used for identification of plant and animals based on the similarity and dissimilarity. The keys are based on the contrasting characters generally in a pair called couplet. It represents the choice made between two opposite options that results in acceptance of only one and rejection of the other. Each statement in the key is called a lead. Separate taxonomical keys are required for each taxonomic category, such as family, genus, species, for identification purpose. Keys are generally analytical in nature. Floral, flora, manuals, monographs, and catalogs are some other means of recording description. They also help in correct identification. Flora contains the actual account of habitat and distribution of plants of a given area. These provide the index of plant species found in a particular area. Manuals are useful in providing information and identification of name species found in an area. Monographs contain information on any one taxon. Summary: the living world is rich in variety. Millions of plants and animals have been identified and described, but a large number still remain unknown. They very range of organisms in terms of size, color, habitat, physiological and morphological feature make us seek the defining characteristics of living organisms. In order to facilitate the study of kinds and diversity of organisms, biologists have evolved certain rules and principles for identification, nomenclature, and classification organisms. The branch of knowing dealing with these aspects is referred to as taxonomy. The taxonomic study of various species of plant and animals are useful in agriculture, forestry, industry, and in the general for knowing our bioresources and their diversity. The basic of taxonomic, like identification, naming, and classification of organisms, are universally evolved under international code. Based on the resemblance and distinct difference, each organism is identified and assigned a correct scientific biological name comprising two words, place or position in the system of classification. These are many categories ranked and are generally referred to as taxonomic category as taxa. All the categories constitute a taxonomic hierarchy. Taxonomists have developed a variety of taxonomic aids to facilitate identification, naming, and classification of organisms. These are these studies are carried out from the actual specimen which are collected from the field and preserved as a referral in the form of herbaria, museum, and in botanical gardens and zoological. In herbaria and museum, live species on the other hand of plants and the animals are found in botanical garden in the zoological park. Taxonomists also prepare and disseminate information through manuals and monographs for further taxonomic study. Taxonomic keys are tools that help in identification based on characteristics.